This is NFA Talk, the show that talks about guns and gun rights, keeping you up to date with what's currently going on, from the newest guns, promotions, and events, plus how we're lobbying for your rights.
Hey everyone, good evening. I'm Nathaniel Milger, social media coordinator for Canada's National Firearms Association. And with me tonight is President Rick Igersich and our friend Nicolas Johnson of TheGunBlog.ca. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good,
doing
good,
great.
Nathaniel. Doing great.
Beautiful. Right on. Okay, so first things first, just in case anyone is unfamiliar with Nicolas, he's a phenomenal resource for Canadian gun owners. Absolutely, I love TheGunBlog.ca. Why don't you give us a bit of an introduction?
Thank you, Nathaniel and Rick, and thank you to the NFA for having me here today. I'd love to. So TheGunBlog.ca is a website and YouTube channel and podcast and Twitter account or X account. And the focus is, well, it's a civil liberties account. Actually, it's a civil liberties website focused on and focused for Canadian gun owners. That's what it is in a nutshell. And it's lately it's been a lot of political and policy news, but that's kind of accidental. What really is close to my heart is the values behind why we do what we do, which is, to me, in my opinion, and the reason I do it is for the values, things like freedom and liberty and good governance and good citizenship and community and that type of thing. Right on.
I'll pass off
Anyway,
Rick here.
Yeah, Nicolas, thanks for coming on our show. I had the pleasure of and the honor of being on Nicolas's show a little while back, and we spent quite a bit of time discussing the issues that were going on that day. A lot of stuff has changed since then, and Nicolas was kind enough to come onto our show this time, and we're gonna talk about the same issues. We're gonna talk about some new issues. And once again, it's a pleasure having you, Nicolas. The NFA is honored with your presence. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm truly honored to be here, and I didn't mention it previously, but the NFA was actually the first of the big three gun organizations that I joined, and you can see. I think my first or second blog post was about you guys.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That was almost 10 years ago.
Wow, time flies.
Well, yeah.
And so let's talk about that. Now, first off, I just want to say, so I do a lot of the posting on our social media, and I have no problem in saying that if we don't have insider information, we need to make sure that it's verified, that it is true, it is real, it is 100% authentic. We go to gunblog.ca ourselves, right? If we haven't heard from you and we go there and we see it, we just appreciate the heck out of everything you do. You're so diligent. I mean, I tell Rick and I have daily morning meetings, and I'll say, okay, something changed on the RCMP website. I can't find it, but I know Nicolas is on it. And then you'll go in there and you'll find just a little bit of something has changed on there. And then you'll make an explanation as to what you think or what you've heard or what is going on right now. There's a lot of times we'll hear something, we can't verify it. And then as soon as we find out what's going on and we see, and we see that you've done your due diligence as well, and we just know that you're an extremely valuable source of information. I don't understand how every gun owner out there isn't watching your blog like a hawk, because you just have the greatest of information. So
I thank you. I feel so like acknowledged and recognized and valued right now. It's thank you.
Follow this man.
And it's true. I mean,
it's a true story.
I also like kind of, I like being, it's a nice feeling to be the guy providing this service. It's a wonderful feeling. And I also scratch my head that why me? Like I don't know much about guns. I don't know much about policy. I don't know much about the law. I don't know much about blogging and websites. I didn't 10 years ago. And out of the, we keep talking about the millions of people with the millions of Canadians with firearms. How did I end up in that situation? And for whatever reason, that's where I am. And also, we have to say there are people who, on different channels, right? I'm sure there are people who are scouring the RCP websites and posting on their social Facebook or their I don't know, Instagram or Tumblr or whatever. Their maybe other websites and forums and stuff. I don't see that. I see when I break a story, and I break a lot of stories. I don't see those other ones, but if there are other people out there doing the same thing, I'd love to know. I would love to know that.
Yeah, well, you know what, Nicholas, we appreciate that too, because you're on it. It seems like as soon as it leaves the Gazette, or as soon as it leaves the RCMP, that you push it out, and we'd like to jump on it right after that too. And it works really good for us. You know, just that you're talking, you haven't been a gun guy for very long and stuff. When did you get started in guns? Just a little bit of background before we get too caught up into what's going on here.
Sure. Well, once upon a time, back in ancient times, I learned to shoot from my dad. He took me to a club that, I grew up in Toronto, and I was born in 1970. And at that time, that's me. And there's my dad. That's my dad right there. Salut, papa. Yeah. So he would introduce me to shooting at Sharon Gun Club, just 45 minutes north of where we lived in Toronto. And so I grew up as a kid learning to shoot. And he bought me my first .22 at age 11. And then as a teenager, basically, I didn't shoot from the sort of teenager until my early 40s, because I was traveling around the world, working around the world, and into women and other things than firearms. And then I got my PAL when I moved back to Canada in 2011, and got my PAL the next year. And got into it mostly from a personal protection angle, and started discovering the laws and how the laws absolutely prevent personal protection, and discreet carry is impossible to get anyway. So that's what got me back into guns and back into the gun community. And then I joined various competitive organizations and clubs, and took a bunch of courses, a bunch of competitions, and some fun stuff in some SHOT Show, some cool shooting at SHOT Show in Las Vegas, the biggest firearm show in the world, and started the Gun Blog in January of 2015. And it was out of anger and frustration. And if you'd like, I can talk more about that.
It's been a runaway train ever since. It seems like I started following you back in the day also, and it just it was great, because even back then, before I was just a director in Ontario, and it was just information that I needed to get out to our members at the time. And it was a great flow of information. And, you can just, we were just talking before in the pre-show that you got quite the journalism background, and you worked with some pretty substantial players in the journalism world in Canada. Can you just touch on that a bit, Nicholas?
Sure. Yeah. So my main journalism experience was with Bloomberg, which is at the time, mostly financial journalism. I joined them in Paris, worked for them in Tokyo as an editor. And then when I came back to Canada, I did a stint at the Globe and Mail. And so the Gun Blog benefits, I would say benefits, talking my own book here, benefits from that tremendous experience of working on big stories. And for a while, I was managing the top story of the top story of Page One. So managing a very high profile team at one point. And so just applying what I would view as journalism basics, and trying to do what a lot of journalists don't do, things as simple as show the date. If you're reporting on something that somebody said, well, when did they say it? What was the context? Don't give me a 3-word soundbite. That's one of the things I do on my right. Like, no, here's the full, here's a transcript of the full thing that they said. If it's a document that I'm basing it on, I'll have a PDF of the document, like, see with your own eyes. This is my interpretation of, but here's the proof, here's the evidence. A lot of journalists don't do that. They don't tell you the context. They don't give you the full quote. They don't show you the document that they're basing their analysis or interpretation on. So I view that as journalism basics. And that's very important to me. So I've tried to bring those values also to the work that I do. Of course, it's an advocacy. What I do is also advocacy. I'm not pretending to be objective. It's right there on the website. I'm not objective. This is not neutral. This is definitely pro-liberty, pro-freedom, pro-good governance, pro-ethics. So when governments arbitrarily do authoritarian things, well, I'm against that. Yeah,
you basically described our mandate. We're definitely... we're definitely not we're definitely not neutral. We're definitely pro firearms ownership in Canada, and amongst everything else you mentioned. Yeah, it's just we were starting to get some comments. Two people you mentioned that self-protection. Captain Ron. Two people in Canada have authorization to carry loaded handguns. Last I heard, I think it was one, but it could
that doubled.
Yeah. So it doubled, but So Marisha says hi, Rick. Hi, Marisha, and feel free. Anybody, feel free to comment. We are open to questions while Nicholas is on here. If we have a question that I can't answer, Nathaniel can't answer, maybe Nicholas can answer it. So feel free to ask us any questions. We'd be more than happy to put them out there. We are live, so your question will pop up and we'll give you an answer. Can I offer one more anecdote? Yeah, just that.
Yeah. So I published when I believe it was Dennis Young who had an ATIP. Showing, from the RCMP saying, there's one person with an ATC for protection of life. And whatever, that page, which was published many, many years ago, continues to be one of my most clicked pages week after week. Like this is, so people who say, this is also really interesting, you guys know this, but a lot of people alone, you hear things like, well, actually, an editorial writer at a large Canadian newspaper once told me defense is un-Canadian. I have the stats to prove that's not true. I have the stats to prove that interest in defense is very much Canadian. And the government's own reports from the 90s, when they surveyed Canadians, 51% said personal protection as a reason for firearm ownership. So.
Yeah. And you know what? And Canada's National Firearms Association is on the same page as that. You should be able to protect yourself. You should be able to protect your family, and you should be able to protect your home. Unfortunately, the way that our laws are worded right now, if you do get in that situation, you're gonna be charged. Chances are you're gonna spend some time in court, but you have a good chance of getting off. And the NFA has quite a library on such cases, and we can steer you in the right direction. Definitely get you some of the best legal minds in Canada to help you along. But yeah, I get this question all the time about self-defense, and I'm glad. It's nice to hear other people on the same page. We get this question all the time, and Canada's National Firearms is all about self-defense. It's just that the laws need to be changed to make it more. Make it more, I guess, less abrasive when that situation happens. Hopefully, it never happens, but sometimes it does, and we're there to help. So if anybody's in that situation, please feel free to reach out to us. You'll get me or you'll get Blair from our vice president, and we'll definitely give you the information you need. And I see Captain Ron also. I'm a Canadian and have a concealed carry permit from New Hampshire. So do I, Captain Ron, and it's good for 32 states and increasing. So we'll keep those going too. Anyway, unless you got anything to add about the background, let's cut to the chase, Nicholas. Let's push ahead. Yeah, keep the momentum going. Yeah. So. Anyway, you've been quite vocal on this, but the Liberal confiscations after Bill C-21, about the black rifles, and actually now just what came to light in the last couple of days with the letter that anybody that had a firearm in Canada got was about the amendments and about the add-ons to the Bill C-21. You want to touch on some of that stuff, Nicholas? You were the guy that kind of broke it, so.
Well, yeah. So it's every morning part of my morning routine is to check a bunch of websites. Government websites and other websites as sources of information. And so the RCMP just sent an email to people, if they have your email, about the latest changes in Bill C-21. And so the government did the notice. I remember the date because that's June 17th, they did the OIC. Then it was in the Gazette a couple of weeks later, and then the RCMP did its summary. It's basically, what I recall is it's the sections of Bill C-21 about selling, if I recall correctly, you guys are going to correct me on this, right? Firearm parts, barrels,
slides and barrels specifically.
And are magazines part of that?
The magazines is part of the amendments. So I don't think they mentioned that, Nathaniel, in the last thing. They specifically mentioned slides and barrels. They mentioned, I think magazines came into play a little earlier.
Okay.
So their process is it's a classic liberal tiered approach and process. First, they mentioned mags, so you had to go into when you went in to buy a magazine for your firearm, whether it be for your rifle, your pistol, or anything else that you have the proper status for. You have to have a PAL to purchase a magazine. And then this last move was, and I don't understand it at all. I kind of see maybe the direction they're going in, but they were talking about slides and barrels. So
I actually have it up right now. Businesses and individuals may only transfer cartridge magazines to an individual that holds a valid PAL. A national freeze on handguns, changes to the definition of a prohibited firearm, red flag laws, also known as the Emergency Weapons Prohibition Order, and new criminal code offenses. So that there is a magazines right there on that as well. So they are there. What it is they put all of this through. We saw it happen in Sec U, Sec D. They talked about it a whole bunch, and now they're just going to slowly trickle it out so that everybody doesn't get really, really mad and up in arms like they did with the G Amendment units, so they can kill us with 1,000 cuts. It's kind of what's going on. One thing that really irks me, and that's been a little bit of a problem online, is just going through a lot of the forums. A lot of people saying, why is this such a big deal? I don't care. Oh, what? You have to show your PAL when you order a piece in from the United States? Well, and I'll tell you right now, half of the rifles behind me, a lot of those pieces, they're all Canadian, but a lot of those pieces came from places in the States, right? Like a lot of these rifles were sold as surplus after the war to the United States. I rebuild them. And I can tell you right now, half of the places down there will no longer sell to Canadians if they have to go to just through one little extra step, right? Half of them don't sell to Canadians anymore anyways, because it gets seized at the border and they don't know what they're looking at. And it sits there for 6 months. They got to get a refund, whatever, right? Because they just don't want us to have this stuff. So it's a matter of attrition. So whenever you say, it doesn't matter to me, this government's taken another little bit, but I don't think it affects me too much, man, it's coming for you. It's going to affect you. You just wait till your shadow barrel gets burnt out and the Americans don't want to build you another one, and nobody in Canada can. And now it's just sitting on a shelf waiting to be destroyed when you die, because now you can't transfer it either. But you didn't care about that either when it happened too. Well, guess what? Now it's gone. They played the long game. We lost, right? So, anyways, I'm gonna pick up the baton there. That anybody who doesn't get that this is a long-term campaign to eradicate firearm ownership. And so you need to show a PAL to buy a slide. I've never bought a slide. The mentality of, it doesn't affect me, who cares, is, I think, short-sighted. And a lot of people I hope are catching on. That the thing that didn't affect you yesterday, well, when they rewrite the thing tomorrow, it will affect you. And now they know that you have it. And so now they're going to take it from you. So this thing of it doesn't affect me today, so I don't care. That, I think, in this context is obviously the wrong way to think. And it's kind of disappointing that so many people think that it doesn't affect me, I don't care. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and you touched on that strikes me, that in the old days, I believe, again, I wasn't paying attention, but I believe firearm laws changed every few years, every few decades. So you didn't really have to pay attention very closely. You could sort of drop it and come back a few years later and you'd be okay. Now we're in a situation where it's changing every 10 minutes. And if you don't pay attention, you could have a thing that was perfectly legal yesterday, and today it's prohibited. You risk jail. And the onus is on you for paying attention.
A really, really good example of that, what you're talking about there, Nicholas, is the Ruger 1022 magazine ban, the 25-round magazine ban. It made probably, I don't know, in our estimation, maybe 20,000 Canadians criminals overnight, because you have a 25-round Ruger 1022 magazine that isn't pinned. And I'm on the street a lot, and people still aren't aware of that law. So, it's a liberal RCMP policy to create criminals on the run. That's my opinion on that stuff.
And it's 1,000 cuts every few days. Something new takes effect every few days. Something gets reinterpreted, it's good if you're a website focused on breaking news on policy changes. It's excellent.
Yeah.
But if you want to live in a country that has predictable laws, that is usually considered good governance. Laws that are clear and transparent and predictable and make sense and beneficial. From all those points of view, this is not a good situation we're moving into.
Yeah. And really, if we didn't have the organizations that we have, if we didn't have TheGunBlog.ca where people could check in, can you imagine back in the day if they were and you, to your point, you said that gun legislation changed once every 10 years, and sometimes it changed for the better. Sometimes it was like, well, this didn't really work, so we'll get rid of the long gun registry. It didn't really work, although they kept it. Okay, I'm talking about Dennis Young earlier. That's how I got involved with all of this insanity. But anyways, won't get into that. But it would sometimes change for the better. But if you don't pay absolute razor sharp attention, you're liable to go to jail over some of these things. Many of those things.
Exactly. And the thing is too, and thank God we have the outlets we have now, between Nicolas and us and stuff. But I still, the day that C-21 was enacted as a law, my phone, my email went off the rails, and it was all calls from people saying, well, I didn't think this was going to happen to me. I didn't think that I wasn't going to be able to pass my family heirlooms on to my children or my grandchildren. What's going on, Rick? Why is this happening? My reply is, where have you been? Why haven't you jumped on board? Why haven't you gotten to the fight earlier? We need help. And a lot of these people aren't even NFA members, but right away, when something happens, they get on the internet, they find Canada's National Firearms Association, and NFA is a transparent organization. My phone number is out there, and I get the calls and the emails, and it's unfortunate. And I think part of the problem, I'm just going to drift off of here, is just lack of information to the 2.4 or 2.6. Nobody really knows that number. Gun owners in Canada, and that's what I think. That's where Nicolas comes into play, and that's where we come into play as the NFA to get the information out there. And once again, thanks for getting it out there, Nicolas. You're on your game when it comes to that.
Well, thank you, and thank you for boosting it, and I share your stuff too. So that, but there's also I have another anecdote that I fell off my chair. So the Liberals, Bill Blair started announcing the mass rifle confiscations in June of 2019 as a campaign promise in the 2019 election. Someone I know voted Liberal in that election when they were saying, we're going to do mass confiscation of these, I'll call them black rifles in quotes.
Yep.
He votes Liberal. They announced that they announced the AIC 6 months later in May. Then he ends up in court to try to stop them. So I'm thinking, I can't figure that one out. But the people, it does the whole thing. I don't know. It doesn't affect me. I'm not concerned. Who cares? They said what they're going to do. They did it. And now he's upset.
And why do they never believe them? They never believe them. And then
sometimes they tell the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Sometimes. Keyword sometimes.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also,
yes.
I feel concerned. I mean, I feel like the finger's pointing at me too, because I'm thinking, okay, so we know this about the anti-firearm laws. We know this is how it works. We know the procedure. Watched, a lot of SECU and SECD, the parliamentary committees that were reviewing the Bill C-71, then Bill C-21. We see the process. We see that how it's a deeply, to put it very politely, it's a deeply flawed process. What about all the other laws? What if every law on any topic, this is just one that we happen to that's close to our heart, that we happen to know a lot about. What about if every law is just as broken and dysfunctional and has unintended consequences, and in some cases achieves the exact opposite of what's in the press release?
And they may very well be, but here's the thing: is that the laws that we see, that we pay attention, and you and I were talking actually about this at the AGM. We both watched all of the SECU, SECD, and we're falling over. We couldn't believe it. Oh my God. And Rick can speak to a little bit of this too, because he just got back from the UN and they're talking about banning guns to solve climate change. We dealt with, if you are a white male, Dr. Pam Palmater, I believe, said if you're like a white male and you like guns, then you're probably a white supremacist. And she said that at SECD, and it was like, oh, excuse me, right? But we can't take First Nations individuals' guns away because they should be able to have their own
way of life.
way of life, their their own rules, laws, their own legislation that they control themselves. But if we, because of the color of my skin, I'm immediately associated with right-wing extremism, and as a white, and this is our highest form of government, and the fact that they talk about us like that, and we wouldn't even, again, going back 10-15 years before we had Secu and Secti or Parle Vu, where we couldn't see the absolute insanity that is being talked about us, and these laws that are being made by experts that know nothing about what they're discussing. You have no idea how many family members have contacted me and said, "Oh, those gun bans, that's a good thing, and you're not affected. So what do you?" And yes, I absolutely. But your guns are like 100 years old. Yeah, and they're calling the Lee Enfield 303 an assault rifle now because it can hold over 10 bullets in its magazine, right? Well, mine can only hold 4. Well, guess what? There is a magazine out there that can hold 10. And if you get your hands on that now, it's considered an assault rifle, even though it's a 100-year-old Canadian legacy rifle. And there's going to be thousands coming out of the woodwork to be destroyed if they push through the G amendments. So that was another major thing. Then all of a sudden, and believe me, we can post and talk about everything that's being banned. And it doesn't seem like we get a whole lot of interaction. But I tell you right now, we post an SKS or we post a Lee Enfield 303, and people are calling us with their hair on fire, panicking, because that's their gun. Everybody owns one of those.
And it's Pam Demoff. I published this on Twitter. She said, they're obviously they're coming for the SKS. They're not pretending. They're coming for the SKS.
Yeah, and if they've told you, then maybe we should believe them. If
they say it in the floor of the House of Commons, Pam Demoff replying to MP Elizabeth May, I believe from memory, the spring of 2023. But I mean, I mean, obviously, now most people don't care about politics, so I understand that most people don't know. What I don't understand, what kind of surprises me, is why aren't the gun clubs and the gun stores having in their newsletters sharing this information? I know why, because people aren't going to buy their guns if they know that they're going to be confiscated. But there's a lag. I think it's not Bill Blair, Blair Hagen, the other Blair Hagen, who said at the 2018 AGM that I went to, and the one in Hamilton a few years ago, that if I think this was his quote: "If you are a gun owner in Canada, you have to be politically active." That's
100% him, because he says that all the time.
I think he said it again recently, right? Yeah.
Going back to these initial bans, the Order in Council and the start of C21, Mendocino was probably the best gun salesman there ever was in Canada, because I spent a lot of time on the road and going between gun shops. There was lines around the corner blocks of people trying to get into gun shops to buy handguns. There's people trying to get into gun shops to buy handguns that didn't even know what a PAL was, or let alone a restricted PAL. It's just that when you tell Canadians that something's going to be banned and it's going to disappear, they want it, and they do it. Good for them, because the more guns we can get into law-abiding Canadians' hands, the better, in my opinion. And, this stuff that's going on, and people are getting nervous and about, deactivating their firearms. I don't promote deactivation of firearms. I know Nathaniel doesn't either. You know what? Let's keep it the way it was built, and talk about it's our personal property. I worked hard for it. I pay taxes on it, and I want to keep that firearm. And that's my point, and that's why I do what I do. That's why Nathaniel does what he does. We want to make sure that the government keeps their hands off our personal property. And all these, and what we mentioned earlier, this tiered approach to gun confiscation, it's continuing to plan. Right now, there's a little bit of shakeup because there's a little bit of uncertainty in Ottawa. But at the end of the day, the plan is in motion, and it's continuing to work its way up the ladder.
Well, they've also said that they're planning the OIC. So Bill C-21 prohibits all the future models, centerfire, centerfire, semi-auto, mag-fed long guns. So Bill C-21 prohibits the future models, future designs.
Yep.
They're planning an OIC. They've said this twice now. They're planning an OIC to take the existing fleet that's in Canadian homes.
There's the misconception about the Order in Council. With the part of C-21 was to get this firearms advisory committee going. If that's active, they can take the black gun list, the 1,800 firearms that are on the original Order of Council, tack it onto the back of C-21 as an amendment, and it's no longer a stroke of a pen to get rid of the order in council. And I think Nathan wants to follow up on that.
Yeah, well, I've seen so many people on like Canadian Gun Nuts or on any of the gun forums that are talking about it, going, "Oh no, my stuff is safe. My SVT 40 is safe because it was pre OIC and pre this and that and the other." And then you tell them, you say, "Okay, there's a firearms advisory committee coming into play. They can with a stroke of a pen, OIC anything that they consider." Anything. It's not even, I mean, they will follow the guidelines. They will follow the guidelines of the Mass Casualty Commission or the OIC, et cetera, and SECU and everything. But they can still make anything. They can make a puppy dog illegal if they want to with just the stroke of a pen. But just before we move on, to your point, Rick, about being the best gun salesman ever, right? Justin Trudeau. I mean, this is a two-pronged thing. The first thing is that they've talked and scared people about guns so much in the last few years, using it as a wedge election issue, that they have made every criminal out there go, "I want a gun too." So now you're actually creating an entire black market because you talk about it so much, right? And then there's escalation because now the guys down the street have guns and now you've got to get them. So now you're going to try and get them. So now we have, 130% increase in violent crime in Canada, most of it with handguns when it comes down to the gang crime. And that has nothing to do with us, but that is just them talking about it so much that now you get guys sitting at home going, "Oh, he's talking about guns again. I got to get one of those." Now, to the second part of that is the best gun salesman in Canada by far. I think it was, we sold 30 years worth of handguns in a single year because they announced that they were going to be doing this OIC. To that extent, that
Guilty.
is why. Yeah, me too. Immediately, and not only that, but firearms were, the government knows about it, so I may as well say I picked me up a Webley revolver, because why the heck not have something historical that I wanted before this ban goes through? Okay, fine. And I know that I'll never be able to transfer it. I know that, when I'm not able to own it again, whether I move or this or that or the other, God forbid, right? You pass on, it's done. But here's the thing. They sold 30 years worth of handguns in a year. They can't buy those back. They don't have the money for that. So what do? They take the easy way out. Well, we're just not going to let you transfer it, blah, blah, blah. So now you got other people, again, calling me up. Your grandmother's pistol from the 20s, that's not on the list. Well, guess what? It is. Guess what? That old Webley is. Guess what? Your grandfather's pistol's on the list too. Guess what? Guess what? Guess what? And then people can't believe it. And it's like, well, here's your assault rifle ban where you bought everything they said. But to your point again, Nicholas, they say it, but nobody's really listening unless you're really paying attention. And that's the main thing, right? And for Rick and I, every single day, and you as well, it's up every morning, seeing what are they hitting with us today, right? Putting your helmet on and reading what's going on today. Or Rick and I will get the text in the middle of the night from somebody that's in the know, and we're, oh my God, now we have to release this in the morning, and it's always bad news now. So anyways, I just thought I'd jump off of that because I thought that was an important point to make, is that they couldn't afford to buy back with these handguns. So guess what? They're just going to take them from you after you die. And it's little old ladies getting the door kicked in by the RCMP because they got it on a list. And yeah, that's where our resources should be going. Sure, little old ladies.
Nathaniel, can I offer one little thing? It's that we should not use the B word. It's confiscation.
Yes, absolutely.
Or destruction or robbery or something, but it's
No, I agree. Actually, Daniel Fritter made a really, really good comment in that recently, and everybody loses their minds when you say buyback, because and I 100% agree.
Yeah.
You can't buy back something that you've never owned. It's just the lexicon, right? But
it's their lexicon.
It is their lexicon.
I'm sure you agree with me, Nicholas. I don't think there's going to be any sort of the B word. I think it's going to be strictly confiscation because, number one, there's not enough money in the coffers. Number two, the Liberals want to spend a lot of money elsewhere where it's not needed. It's going to be simple. One day you have your personal property, the next day you don't, and it's going to come down to the point. It's going to put us in a bad situation. But the NFA works within the law to change the law, so hopefully we can at least have a government change or make some changes before that.
That's I don't know where we're going next, what our next topic is, but that's my hope. I'm keeping my AR-15s and they will become my sons. I'm keeping my handguns and then they will be my sons.
Okay, so I think this is a great segue here. So what I want to bring up here is I'm going to throw this up here. So you were at our AGM. You were one of our guest speakers. There you are, smiling away there. And you've always got such a great attitude towards everything. The rest of us are all grumbling, but you've always got a smile on your face. We really appreciate that, and when you were at our AGM, you were really, really talking very, very positive about everything. And I'm actually just going to pull up a little bit of video here that we can talk over while we talk. But, here you are at the AGM with, schmoozing at the opener there. And then after you had everybody on their feet, quite literally. But one thing that I wanted to talk to you about at the AGM and that you really, really ran with was the crumbling of the anti-gun initiative right now. So I'll just pass it back to you.
Yeah, so I think there is a way of analyzing what's been happening over the past, since May 1st of 2020, over 4 years, that the crumbling of the crumbling of the anti-firearm regime. And the latest event that was kind of a nice news hook for the AGM back in May was Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan motion, where they said, I have it right here on my screen actually. They said that they voted unanimously, everybody present in the Saskatchewan legislature that day, that this assembly calls upon the government of Canada to devolve all the relevant parts of the Firearms Act to the province of Saskatchewan in order to allow it to administer and regulate legal firearms possession. And what does that mean? Like, that's a kind of difficult to process, a lot of words there to process on video. So what does that mean? That means that the government of Saskatchewan is saying they want to control legal firearms ownership in their province, not the federal government. They do. And why does that matter? Well, Saskatchewan, like Alberta, was one of the people that passed this law specifically they passed a law specifically to block the federal confiscations. And so you had a bunch of things. I laid out a bunch of breadcrumbs. You also had Ontario, the Solicitor General of Ontario, who
and
he
I
didn't
have
say.
that quote right here.
You have the quote there. Okay.
I have it right here. I'll pop it right up here. So yeah, he actually told our in-house lobbyist who met with him, which is phenomenal. This was kind of big news at the time, but he assured us that they did not want to be using their limited resources to aid the Liberal NDP coalition with their planned buyback scheme to confiscate, process, and destroy politically targeted firearms from legal, vetted, and licensed Ontario owners. Big deal.
Well, it is a big deal because that's Ontario. Again, Ontario is in a political situation. A lot of anti-gun voters, a lot of left-leaning voters. They don't want to. The premier can't. I believe this is my interpretation. The premier can't come out and say what he really thinks. So they have to use an important person in government to put it in slightly different language. But the point is, Ontario, the biggest province in the country with the most gun owners in the country, is not going to be using its resources for the federal firearm confiscations. So Ontario's out. Saskatchewan, not interested. Alberta's out. Yukon, not interested. New Brunswick, half the country is politely, indirectly, or absolutely overtly saying they're out. So
and
you have
Manitoba as well at one point.
Yes.
However, they've had an election, and now we're even seeing today there was a bunch of things coming out where I'm not a huge hunter myself, but they're now cutting down the tags for moose or something. There's a whole thing. Blood Origins Canada, shout out to Blood Origins Canada. They're on top of it. We'll get more information later on, but it almost seems like the Manitoba NDP are starting to pull back on protecting hunters and fishers and fishermen, stuff like that with things. So anyways, I'll let you continue, but I just thought I'd jump in there.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's I'll have to, now I know what I'm doing after this video call. But the point is, so you have provinces opting out or not participating or actually blocking the federal confiscations. You have individuals who are hugely, the biggest at the time, the e-petition, the biggest e-petition in House of Commons history. Since then, lots and lots of people who are waking up to what's going on and saying, I'm not handing in my firearms. And then you have the people, including also the RCMP. The RCMP's in on it, right? They help the government. They help the Liberals develop the lists. They finagled with their algorithm to say who's targeted and nullify this our registration certificates. So people are losing trust in the administrators of the anti-firearm regime. People are losing trust in the political system. People are losing trust in the law. I think that's terrible for social stability and political stability. It's very good for the collapse of the anti-firearm regime, this authoritarian fraud that's been pulled on the Canadian public, that by taking my firearm somehow it's keeping someone safe. So there were other breadcrumbs as well that I laid out in that presentation, that there is a way of looking at what's been happening for the past 5 years, and even the bigger picture, that people are losing trust in the anti-firearm regime. People are now advocating civil disobedience. There's that person who was in the meeting in Whitehorse with Minister Mendicino, I'm going to say a couple of years ago, Klassen, a former RCMP officer, who tells Mendicino to his face, that's it. I'm going to read it there. I recognize a bad law when I see it. I've obeyed the law. I've enforced the laws. I will purposely indulge in civil disobedience. Telling Mendicino, the guy pushing these confiscations, telling him to his face that if Bill C-21, those were the amendments that were ultimately withdrawn, but that's what the Liberals are planning. A former law enforcer saying, I will be a civil disobedient. It's phenomenal what's happening. And it's not one or two people here and there saying it hush hush. People are saying it now publicly. So I'm optimistic. That gives me optimism that it's ripe. The system has to change. It's broken. There will be huge non-compliance. That's not good. That's not good for society, and that's not good for police. That's not good for individuals. It gets yucky. It gets really yucky.
Yeah, and the thing we have to watch out for, and we discussed this before, is complacency, because things are disrupted in Ottawa right now. It looks like there's going to be a government change, but we can't get complacent, because you know what? We still have to deal with the next government coming in. There's a lot of changes, especially in the Firearms Act, in the criminal code, that need to be made. And this is a perfect segue to what you just said. We've got all this stuff. People are becoming aware, but we can't become complacent either. I think you want to touch on that more, Nicolas.
That to me is a huge risk. From what I gathered, there's a movement gathering around Pierre Poilievre, and people are comparing it to Trudeau-mania, not the Trudeau-mania current, the previous from the 60s and 70s around Pierre Trudeau, that people who were much older than me, who were around at that time, say they haven't seen a political movement, a social movement around a political leader since those days. So there's something very powerful happening around Pierre Poilievre right now, which is phenomenal to see. And I absolutely hope he wins, and I hope his government just gets a strong majority. The complacency risk is that people assume that it's already done. No, until the ballots are counted and we've sealed the deal, it's not done. So people might think, oh, it's in the bag. I don't need to volunteer. I don't need to donate. I don't need to vote. That to me is a risk, that people think they can, that the deal is done when it's very far from done.
Yeah, well, even if the stars do align and Poilievre does get elected, we still have to continue the fight. If there's no input coming in from firearms owners, it's going to be put on the back burner, and that's happened in the past. I spoke to Pierre on several occasions. He assures me he's going to make some changes to the Firearms Act, to the criminal code, and he's going to use people like you and I to actually sit down and review what's there and how these changes could be made, instead of lawyers and bureaucrats who, in fact, wrote the original criminal code and the Firearms Act. There was no gun lobbies involved. There was no hunters. There was no sport shooters. There was no media people like yourself involved. It was all lawyers and bureaucrats. So we have to, even like I say, if the stars align, Pierre gets elected, we still have to continue the fight. Nothing changes on our end, and as far as complacency, you can't just assume that things are going to be back to normal. We have to continue the fight, and that's what we at Canada's National Firearms Association are going to continue to do.
And you play in my opinion, you play a very important role there. And I'm going to extend your hypothetical there. Let's say he wins. Let's say he wins. He's the PM. He's got a strong conservative majority in Parliament, and decides he's going to rework some laws. Okay, well, what's the earliest that could get done? How long does a law take to go through Parliament? Year and a half-ish. So let's say he gets in October 2025. The closest anything actually changes is mid-2020, let's say early 2027. I'm just doing the math mentally in my head here. Correct me if I'm wrong. So early 2027.
Yeah.
That's a lot of confiscations between now and then. There's a lot of there's a lot of firearm owners who are going to pass away between now and then. They're not going to get their firearms back. Their children, their families, their wives, they're not getting their firearms back. So
just to add a little caveat to that, with that said, you're still dealing with an unfriendly Senate. So how long is it really going to take?
Well, and also we're pretending he starts on day one and gets it through fast. I don't know if this is his top priority. I don't know how significant it is. It could take years. And if he doesn't do it, he wouldn't be the first conservative who promised something who he didn't follow up on. Like that could happen too. And let's say he does everything he promised. Boom. Well, guys, this, but people think, well, then we're clear. We're in the clear. Well, what happens after him? The Liberals are going to come back and they're going to pick up the baton and they're going to get back to doing what they do. Like this is unfortunately. We've had the same debates today that we had 100 years ago, and it's terrible to believe this, but I believe we're going to be having the same debates in 100 years.
And that's a brilliant point. I think you brought that up at our AGM. It just in a so-called democracy, which I kind of it's a loose term as far as Canada goes, but in a so-called democracy, governments change and this stuff comes back. I think our fight is more, make firearms in Canada more palatable to everybody. Make firearms owners more palatable. You know what? We get vetted every day. We get a criminal check. I get a criminal check. Nicolas gets a criminal check. Nathan gets a criminal check every day. If we have guns, we're good people. The people out there don't have to worry about us. We're not the problem. And I hope when Poilievre gets in that he shifts his focus to where the problem really is. And it's not us. It's the criminals. It's the people that are smuggling guns. It's the people that are 3D printing, doing the straw purchases. I hope they change their focus, because right now, and we saw this in the last election. You guys are aware of that. All of a sudden, the focus shifted to Canadian firearms owners, and it was, making us look like bad people. And the Trudeau government was going to do all this stuff to make Canada a safer place. Well, guess what? Since then, the crime rate has gone up. Since he locked our so-called assault weapons in our safes, crime rate has went up. Everything has increased. He has done absolutely nothing to stop the crime in Canada. I think if he brings firearms up in the next election, we've got a really good challenge. We can go back and say, hey, man, you had it for 4 years. This is what happened. What went wrong? I guess you focused on the wrong people.
And to that point, though, there's a lot of speculation. People that talk in a lot of the gun forums online that talk about the last thing the Liberals want to do is actually get this confiscation underway or get it even running, because it's such a rich wedge issue. They can use it till the end of time. If there's a gun out there anywhere, they will use it. So if they actually got this pushed through, they would have what are they going to talk about? The economy? I mean, Chrystia Freeland, we found out today, might be being replaced by Mark Carney, and there's a whole fight between Freeland and Trudeau right now that's all over the news. And it's like, what are they going to do? What can they do? Anything. All they can do is point at things and scare you. And Trudeau, who has mentioned he has dyslexia for numbers or whatever, said the math is simple, that less guns equals less gun crime. And really, I think that the math has come back to bite him in the ass again here. So forgive me if I won't think about his numeric policy. But I just want to say something that actually is related, but not related to this conversation that we're having. So we're talking about by 2025, 2026, when this legislation comes into play, we are going to see a lot of things confiscated and destroyed. I want to throw this out there to all of the individuals that are watching this right now. If you do have an elderly family member or an individual that is being forced to get rid of their collection right now, let us know. We want to hear about it. We're helping people right now. We're getting those firearms into places where they will not be destroyed right now. And that's a very, very important part of what we're doing right now. One thing about Canada's National Firearms Associations, as Rick said earlier, you can contact us at any time. Email us up, or his phone number is out there. I mean, we're really, really, really accessible. And a lot of the stuff we deal with on a daily basis is individuals calling us saying, look, I haven't done nothing wrong, and now they're coming for my stuff. What can I do? Well, guess what? We have legal experts ready to go. We have directors ready to go. Guess what? Grandpa's gun isn't getting taken away today. Okay. And if it does get taken away, it'll be taken away by one of our allies who's going to put it somewhere where it can be safe for the next little while. And we're just biding our time here and hoping that things work out. So no more guns need to be smelted. If you contact us, we can do what we can to help you. Obviously, we can't help in every situation, but there's quite a few that we have already helped in. So just so that people know that, we've been trying to get that out there. I've seen some very unfortunate cases recently where people didn't know that we were an option to contact. And yeah, you know what? Unfortunately, you're not going to get any money back for these a lot of the time. You're not going to be able to sell them. You're not going to be able to transfer them. But wouldn't it be great to get Grandpa's pistol from the war into a museum instead of getting smelted down?
Yes.
You know, we can help with that. We can help with that. And then at least
and just one thing that Nathaniel didn't mention, we have probably the largest firearms case law library of any organization and probably any lawyer or anything else in Canada. You know, we have that, and Blair Hagan, our vice president, he's a walking encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to firearms law. If you have any issues, feel free to contact us. We're 100% approachable. We're 100% transparent. You know, we made some changes in the NFA, and we're moving in a different direction now. You know, we made some changes. We made some leadership changes that we needed to do at the time, and our new direction is definitely a positive direction. And like I say, if you need anything at all, if you need legal advice, we can set you up with the best there is in Canada.
So that being said, we are actually 10 minutes away before they kick us off, because there's a couple of platforms we stream on where they cut it off right at an hour. So, Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Yeah.
I love hearing what you said. And I'm thinking, I want legal advice. I want tactical advice. I want. There's one thing in what Rick said a moment ago that struck me also, that the media. I want to talk about the media. Just one of my pet peeves. As a guy who spent many years of his life inside newsrooms, I know how journalists think. I see how journalists work, and I understand how newsrooms operate. And what a lot of people do is blame what's going on the Liberals or on the Prime Minister, and that's fair. But I think we wouldn't know any of what they do if it were not for the media. And so I believe the media are the first, I'm going to use the word, propagandists of what the Liberals are. No one would know what Justin Trudeau says or does if it weren't reported by a media, whether a friendly media or a non-friendly media. Mostly in Canada, they're friendly. And they take the message and they spin. So I believe, here's for consideration. The Liberals know that most journalists are anti-gun lefties. That's just factual. Okay, Liberals know that, so they're going to feed them what they want in their headlines, and they're going to feed them the quotes that they want. And if you look at the question and answer, if you go back to YouTube and look, it's or the Gun Blog, look at the Gun Blog. I have the video. You have to do of the May 1st, 2020 press conference. If you listen to the questions by the journalists, it's like, why, you know, when is this happening? Why can't you move faster? Why did you wait till now? They're hungry for confiscation. They hate us. They want to push the confiscation. They want to push the confiscation message. They push it so hard. You see in the editorials of the major papers. There are some media like me, like Rebel, like a few others who are neutral or even profile.
Brian Lilly, back and forth, you know, guys like that.
Liberties.
Yeah.
But the media is sort of this secret weapon that does their job so well that they're invisible. And that's, I think, an incredible thing about the media. They've convinced the world. The biggest hoax the media ever pulled was to convince the world that they're just the facts. Hey man, we're not inventing the news. We're just reporting it. And I believed it when I was a journalist. I believed it. And it was since starting the Gun Blog that I realized, wait a second, they're twisting and spinning. They're not acting in good faith to give the context, to give the reality. They're spinning this to push an agenda. And it took me after more than 10 years as a journalist, as a senior editor, to realize that, I didn't do it. I had no bad faith. I had no ill will, but I realized my bias after I left the profession.
Yeah, and it's, you know what, and just add millions of dollars to the wash to mainstream media, and it just amplifies the whole situation, exactly what you said, but amplified because the federal government, infused, what was it, $55 million? Who knows? Nobody knows the actual amount, but it was hundreds of millions. Yeah. So
I think the number you're thinking of was 595 million.
That's it. Yeah. $595 million. So you know what? It's gonna change the narrative, in my opinion. And Nicolas knows a lot more about this than I do, but it's definitely gonna help them shift the narrative, I think, is a good way to put it.
And there's that famous quote, gosh, I can't remember who it's by, but it's when your salary depends on you not understanding something, you're not going to understand it.
Yeah.
I just want to pull this one up here. This gentleman here who's always commenting on our stuff, and thank you. He says you can transfer firearms to a friend or relative in the United States. I'm going to say right now, that's really, really hard to do. In fact, I haven't heard of anybody successfully actually doing it yet.
Well, you know what? I can chime in on that. There's an organization in Canada, which the NFA cut ties with. They're the industry group, the CSAAA, and their president owns a gun shop in Orillia. I'm not going to mention the name, but they're doing that. But they're charging big dollars because the gun has to be branded. It has to go from them to an FFL in the States. At the end of the day, the person in the States, in my opinion, would more than likely be ahead to buy the same firearm in the States because of these charges and this group that's making this stuff happen. And I'm being very transparent on this stuff. That's what I feel, and I wasn't going to touch on this, but we can't have groups in Canada selling out gun owners. And again, my opinion, we were sold out in a few different ways with that. But as far as going back to this gun, I think right now our best bet. Let's get this government changed. Let's work with the new government. Let's get these bills taken care of. Let's get this order in council taken care of, so we don't have to worry about stuff like this. That's where the fight is. Like I say, in the state, moving guns to the States, it can be done. I've heard of it being done, but it's not feasible monetary, unless it's some family heirloom, that's important that stays in action. But like Nathaniel mentioned earlier, the NFA has a lot of things in place on how to deal with that stuff, how to get the gun held till the laws change. That's a whole nother segment. We could talk about that, but please don't I ask that you don't get your firearms destroyed or deactivated. It just, in my world, that's just not right to have your personal property destroyed or deactivated. And I don't know, Nicolas, what do you think of that?
I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be nice if the RCMP firearms program or the government Department of Confiscation put out something authoritative and trustworthy on what to do? So if you don't want to confiscate your guns, here are some options, and here's how to do it. Because I think you're right. Legally, there might be a way to export them, but in theory, but it's hard and it's expensive. So what if the people doing this showed a little good faith and actually gave us some options?
That's the last thing they want, though, because they want to be able to put them on a list so they can show their anti-gun lobbyists they destroyed another gun. A very, very good friend of mine just moved to Texas, and he had a couple of rifles. They wouldn't even let him take them to Texas. They're in storage in Alberta right now. And he was really upset about it at the time, but he called me about a month after being in Texas and said, I'm hunting hogs with a burst fire from a helicopter. I'm good. Like, wherever they are, right, we'll keep storing them till the buyback, the confiscation. But in the meantime, I'm good. I've got what I want down here, and I just feel bad for you guys back home, and God bless them for it, right? So
yeah. Well, just to touch on that note, the Canada's National Firearms Association is dug in hard. We've got a bunch of good people, and I can assure you, on my watch, I'm going to do my very best to make sure it doesn't happen, and our people are going to do their very best to make sure it doesn't happen. This is our daily job. This is what we do. We work every day to make sure this stuff isn't going to happen. And to anybody out there that's wondering what we're doing, we're in the fight. We're in the forefront. And I pledge on my watch that I'm going to do everything to the best of my ability, and then some. If I have to reach deeper, I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen, and doesn't happen to the good law-abiding Canadians.
Thank you.
Now I'm getting a little excited, guys.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, we just hit an hour here, so we definitely just got disconnected off Instagram. So that being said, thank you very much, Nicolas, for joining us. Thanks, Rick,
Pleasure.
for your wonderful insight every time. I just want to throw this out there before we go. We have a wonderful, wonderful promotion going on right now. This thing is a gorgeous, gorgeous rifle, the Grey Guardian. And on top of it, this is Canada's annual big freaking gun giveaway. And on top of the rifle itself and this amazing Leupold scope, you actually get to take the level 1 precision rifle course with the legendary Rob Furlong. So if you have any interest in that, check it out on our website. It's definitely, I mean, if I wasn't a member or if I wasn't working here, I'd definitely be going after that one for sure. So really, really check that out. Other than that, I just want to say as well, check out the Gun Blog. I mean, phenomenal, Nicolas. You're doing the Lord's work, right? So keep doing what you're doing. We're going to keep an eye on that. We're going to keep sharing your posts. It's excellent. And on that note, I think we can say goodnight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nicolas.
Thanks for listening to this episode of NFA Talk. Like and follow the NFA on social media and sign up to become a member.